My ML booked a family cruise for everyone except me. So I showed up in the Caribbean on my family's mega yacht. Now, she's begging for an invite. I always knew my mother-in-law, Diane, didn't exactly consider me one of them, but I didn't realize just how far she'd go until the night she announced a Christmas vacation I wasn't invited to. It happened over Sunday dinner, the kind where the table is full but the conversations feel thin. Diane stood at the head of the table, holding a stack of envelopes like she was dealing cards at a casino. "I've planned something special for the whole family this year," she said, practically glowing. "A 7-day Caribbean cruise. We all deserve a little fun." She started handing out the envelopes one by one. Brett, my husband. Amy, his sister. Amy's husband. Then Brett's brother. Then the brother's girlfriend, the one who had only been around for 3 months and still spelled gnocchi like it had a silent Z. Then nothing. She sat back down, smoothing her skirt with the satisfaction of a benevolent queen. I waited, and waited, and waited. Finally I asked, "Did you forget mine?" Her eyebrows shot up, feigning confusion, so poorly it almost felt insulting. "Oh, I assumed you want to spend Christmas with your family. You're always talking about them." I hadn't talked about my family in months. I'd been trying to bond with hers, or at least be tolerated. "But I'm Brett's wife," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been married 4 years. She shrugged. "The rooms were booked already, and the suites only allow 5 people. I didn't think you'd mind. 5 people. But somehow a girlfriend of 3 months made the cut." I looked at Brett across the table, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He shoveled potatoes into his mouth like he was trying to bury himself in them. This wasn't the first time Diane had accidentally left me out. The Vegas reunion, the room blocks filled up. The weekend at their lake house. "We thought you were working." The wine tour, it's just a little blood family tradition. But this, a week-long Christmas cruise, entirely without me? On the drive home, Brett tried his best to play mediator instead of husband. "She probably didn't mean anything personal. Maybe we can buy you a separate ticket? You could stay on another floor." I stared at him. "You think I should book myself onto a family vacation I was excluded from?" He was silent for a full 10 seconds before he muttered, "What else can we do?" "She already paid." He kept his eyes on the road like he was hoping it would swallow him whole. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. My family had money. Serious, generational, old money. But I never flaunted it, not once. I'd married Brett because he was kind, grounded, and nothing like the performative show-offs I'd grown up around. But his mother had pushed me far enough. That night, I called my father. "Dad," I said, "is the Mariana available over Christmas?" "The big one?" he asked. "The 180-footer? "Yes." "Done." "Where to?" "The Caribbean." "Same route as one specific cruise ship." He chuckled deeply. "Someone excluded you from something." I didn't have to answer. He already knew. The following Sunday dinner, Diane was in full cruise captain mode, showing everyone pictures of the ship, reciting restaurant menus and deck activities like she'd memorized them from brochures. "Such a shame you can't join us," she said lightly. I smiled. "Actually, I won't be here for Christmas." "Oh, a local gathering with your family?" she asked, barely listening. I took out my phone and laid it on the table. A full-screen photo of the Mariana, 180 feet of gleaming steel and luxury. "We're taking this to the Caribbean," I said. "Coincidentally, the exact ports your cruise will visit." The room went silent. Amy leaned in. "Is that a private yacht?" "One of ours," I replied. "We'll have a full crew. Chef, jet skis, submarine, helicopter for island hopping." Diane blinked rapidly. How many people are going?" "Oh, everyone. My parents, siblings, cousins, their partners, even my cousin's new boyfriend of 1 month. Family is family, you know." Her mouth opened slightly. The irony hit her harder than a wave slamming the side of a ship. Brett choked on air. "Maybe I could come with you instead?" I laughed softly. No. You already have plans. And besides, this trip is more of a blood family thing." Diane's jaw tightened. For the first time ever, she had no comeback. When we finally set sail, I posted nothing until we were already miles out. Breakfast on the deck. Yoga on the helipad. Sunset in a hot tub. The kind of things Diane believed only existed in movies. The moment their cruise ship reached the first port, Brett called. "We can see your yacht from here," he said, voice tight. The captain even announced it over the loudspeaker. "People are asking about it." I smiled, sipping my drink. "How fun. Enjoy your cruise." A pause. Mom wants to visit the yacht, he said. Could she? Of course, I said sweetly. Tell her to take a water taxi to Marina Bay at 2 tomorrow. I hung up and turned toward the ocean, letting the wind wash over me. Diane wanted to see the yacht. Good. Because what she didn't know was, this wasn't the moment she'd be humbled. It was only the beginning. What happens when the queen of exclusion steps onto a yacht built on everything she never knew I had? And what happens when she realizes the outsider she dismissed might be the only person with the power to expose her entire family's hypocrisy? Diane steps onto the yacht, and everything shifts. The next afternoon, just before 2, I stood on the upper deck of the Mariana as a small water taxi bounced across the waves toward us. Even from a distance, I recognized Diane's wide-brimmed hat, the one she wore when she wanted to look wealthy without actually knowing how wealth looked. She sat rigidly at the front of the water taxi, clutching her purse with both hands. But as the yacht grew larger in her view, her posture slowly wilted. One hand gripped the railing. Her mouth parted slightly. The yacht dwarfed the water taxi like a whale swallowing a minnow. And for once, Diane looked small. When she stepped onto our dock, she hesitated before taking her first step on the gangway, like she was afraid she might dirty the deck with her sandals. I greeted her politely, but without warmth. Welcome aboard, I said. Let me show you around. She followed, stiff and silent, her eyes darting everywhere, the polished teak flooring, the towering decks, the sun-soaked lounges arranged like something out of a luxury magazine. As we walked toward the main deck, the air filled with a rich sense of fresh lobster and herbs. The chef was plating lunch at a long dining table set with crystal and fine china. My family sat around it laughing, glasses clinking, plates gleaming with food that belonged in a Michelin star restaurant. My mother rose gracefully when she saw us. You must be Diane, she said with a warm, effortless smile. We're so happy you could join us today. Diane shook her hand, clearly thrown off by my mother's poise. She began rambling about the cruise, its restaurants, the shows, the casino, trying to inflate the ship she'd been bragging about for weeks. But the moment she saw our chef crack open a fresh lobster tail, her voice died mid-sentence. She stared at the lobster, then at the wine chilling in crystal buckets, then at the view, clear blue water stretching endlessly behind a table covered in linen and silver. Her expression flickered. Cruise buffets and balcony rooms didn't feel quite as prestigious now. This is quite something, she murmured. I continued the tour. The hot tub, the jet skis, the private submarine, the helicopter on the upper landing pad. With each stop, Diane sank deeper into a quiet she'd probably never experienced before. Her confidence deflated like someone letting air out of a balloon. At first, I felt triumphant. This was the justice I'd imagined. But watching her shrink with every comparison didn't feel as sweet as I thought. It felt uncomfortable. Too easy. Almost unfair. My father must have noticed my discomfort because he approached, his voice gentle but strong. So Diane, he said kindly, how's the cruise so far? He asked about her family, their rooms, the ship's amenities, real, genuine curiosity. His politeness wasn't performative. It wasn't meant to shame her. But ironically, kindness made her inconsistencies more visible than sarcasm ever would. She answered in clipped, awkward fragments. Her eyes flickered between the helicopter and the chef and my father's calm expression, as if trying to recalculate everything she believed about me. Then she cleared her throat. Would it be possible for Brett to come visit too? Of course, I said. He can take a water taxi over whenever he wants. Relief washed over her face instantly, as if she'd been hoping Brett could act as a buffer. Or a rescuer. She texted him right away with shaking hands. Minutes later, she turned to me. I didn't know your family was so successful. I held up my hand to stop her. The yacht isn't the issue. The issue is the way you've excluded me for 4 years. Her cheeks flushed. She opened her mouth to defend herself, something about assumptions, misunderstandings, intentions, but I cut in sharply. If you thought I preferred spending time with my family, why didn't you assume your son's new girlfriends preferred being with their families too? Yet they got invitations. And I didn't. Diane froze. She didn't have an answer. Her silence was the first honest moment she'd had with me in years. Just then, a water taxi pulled up. Brett stepped out, hair windblown, shirt wrinkled, eyes anxious. He looked around the yacht like a man stepping into a dream he didn't belong in. But instead of coming to me first, he walked straight to his mother. Mom, are you okay? He asked, touching her arm. I felt heat rise in my chest. Even now, even after everything. His first instinct was to comfort her. My brother's girlfriend, the one who had been dating him for only a month, strolled over with a drink in her hand. Hi, she said cheerfully to Diane. Isn't this yacht incredible? Your daughter-in-law is amazing. I love how your family all sticks together. Amy's name, Jeremy's, even cousins. Everyone else got immediate belonging. Except me. The irony hit Diane like a punch. Brett finally walked toward me. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I led him to a side lounge where the walls were glass and the ocean stretched endlessly behind him. Before I could sit, he started pacing. My whole family is humiliated, he said. Everyone on the cruise is talking about this yacht. The captain made an announcement about it. He seemed truly distressed. But not once did he mention the real issue, that I'd been excluded. You're upset about them being embarrassed, I said slowly. Not about me being left behind. That's not what Then what did you do when your mother publicly left your wife out of a family Christmas trip? He stopped. His jaw worked. No words came out. I didn't need them. The silence said enough. He looked lost, as if he'd only now realized the depth of the damage he'd allowed for years. And that's when I understood something I hadn't before. This yacht wasn't the real revenge. The moment when Brett realized what he'd failed to protect, that was the true reckoning. As we walked back to the main deck, a water taxi approached again, and this time Amy stepped out, her expression tight with guilt. She'd come to say something she should have said years ago. And what she revealed next, it didn't just expose Diane. It exposed all of them. When Amy finally confronts her mother and her brother, long-kept family secrets spill out. And suddenly, I'm not the only one Diane has mistreated, not by a long shot. The family fractures, and the truth finally spills out. Amy stepped onto the yacht like someone who had rehearsed this moment in her head a dozen times, but still wasn't sure if she was brave enough to go through with it. Porter followed close behind her, offering a supportive hand on her back. She scanned the deck, her eyes landing on me first. There was no hesitation. She walked right up and asked quietly, Can we talk? Alone. The request alone felt like a shift. Amy had always been polite, always kind, but passive. Too willing to let her mother's behavior slide because it wasn't aimed at her. I nodded, and we slipped toward the bow where the wind drowned out the conversations from the main deck. The moment we were out of earshot, Amy exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. I should have said something a long time ago, she blurted out. About how Mom treats you. Her voice cracked. She looked ashamed, and that alone made my chest tighten. I knew the cruise thing was wrong, she continued. We all did. Even Jeremy and his girlfriend talked about it. But nobody wanted to challenge her. Why? I asked, though part of me already knew. Amy's jaw clenched. Because she doesn't take criticism. Ever. If anyone pushes back, she makes herself the victim. She cries, she gets dramatic, she shuts us out. It's exhausting and honestly manipulative. There it was. The word Diane would never be brave enough to admit about herself. Manipulative. Porter joined us, slipping his arm around Amy's shoulders. His face was firm, unlike hers, steady, unwavering. I told your husband the night the cruise was announced that it was messed up, he said. He agreed it was wrong, but said he didn't want to get in the middle. I swallowed the anger that rose in my throat. Not getting in the middle is choosing a side, I said quietly. Amy nodded hard. Exactly. But Brett has always been like that with Mom. She cries, and he collapses. He'll do anything to avoid hurting her feelings, even if it means hurting yours. That part stung. Not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. After a moment, Amy squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. Her sincerity was real. And painfully late. Before we could continue, we heard footsteps behind us. My mother-in-law. Diane approached like someone determined to reclaim the spotlight she felt slipping away. Her posture was rigid, chin lifted, forced smile plastered across her face. Oh, there you are, she said, as if we'd wandered off without permission. I hope you're not discussing anything unpleasant. Her eyes cut to Amy with a silent warning. And in that instant, something in Amy snapped. She straightened, stepped forward, and said words I don't think she'd ever dared to say. Mom, stop pretending nothing happened. You excluded her. Again. And you've done it for years. Diane blinked as if slapped. Excuse me. You heard me, Amy said, voice shaking but firm. Vegas. The lake house. The wine tour. And now a whole Christmas cruise. You always have an excuse, but the pattern is obvious. Diane's color rose in blotchy patches. She opened her mouth, probably to cry or deny, but Amy didn't let her. You're not the victim here, she said. She is. Diane put a hand to her chest dramatically. So now I'm a villain? Is that what everyone thinks? Porter stepped forward. No one thinks you're a villain. They just want you to stop treating her like she's temporary. Diane turned on him. This is a family matter. And she is family, Porter shot back. The deck fell into a tense silence. My mother, watching from a distance, subtly guided my younger cousins inside, sensing this confrontation needed no audience. Diane's voice softened into something fragile and performative, the tone she used when she needed sympathy. I try so hard, she whispered. I always try, but nothing I do is good enough. I had heard enough. I stepped forward, calm and steady. This isn't about good enough. It's about exclusion. A choice. One you made repeatedly. She inhaled sharply, but before she could protest, footsteps sounded again. Brett. He joined the group, a mixture of confusion and dread on his face. What's going on? He asked. Amy didn't hesitate. We're talking about Mom excluding your wife from the cruise, and everything else she's been left out of for years. Brett stiffened. Amy, not now. No, she interrupted. Now. Because it's been ignored long enough. Diane pointed at me like she was presenting evidence. She never told me she wanted to come. I honestly thought she preferred spending holidays with her family. That's a lie, Amy snapped. Diane gasped. How dare? You told me at Thanksgiving you didn't invite her because she wouldn't fit in. Your exact words. The world seemed to stop spinning. Silence. Total, thick silence. Brett stared at his mother, horrified. You said that. Diane's lip trembled. I didn't mean, I was just. Say it. I said quietly. What did you think I wouldn't fit into? She swallowed, opened her mouth, closed it, looked down. She had no answer that would save her. Brett's face drained of color. For the first time, he wasn't looking at me with disappointment. He was looking at her. Amy exhaled shakily. There's more, Brett. Mom didn't want her in the wedding planning group chat either. Remember when she forgot to include her? That wasn't an accident. And the lake house, Porter added. She told us she didn't invite her that weekend because she didn't want the dynamic thrown off. Diane squeezed her eyes shut, as if each truth was a stab. My heart hammered in my chest. Years of vague excuses suddenly made terrible sense. Brett turned toward me and whispered, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. And maybe he didn't. But that didn't erase the fact that he'd never questioned it. He'd never defended me. And now he was finally forced to see the truth he'd ignored. Behind us, another water taxi approached, and Jeremy and Camila stepped on board, right into the middle of the storm. But they weren't arriving to help. They were arriving with a truth none of us expected, one that would crack open the rest of Diane's behavior and reveal just how deep her favoritism went. Jeremy and his girlfriend walk into a hurricane, and what they confess next doesn't just expose the exclusion, it reveals the secret Diane has been hiding from all her children for years. The moment that turns the entire family upside down. Jeremy and Camila stepped off the water taxi completely oblivious to the emotional wildfire they were walking into. Camila looked like she'd been enjoying a carefree day, sunglasses still on, hair blowing in the wind, smiling as if she just spotted friends at brunch instead of a brewing family implosion. Jeremy, on the other hand, looked tense the moment his feet hit the deck. He scanned the faces around him, Brett pale and shaken, Amy furious, Porter stiff with anger, Diane trembling, me silent. What happened? Jeremy asked slowly. No one answered immediately. The silence told him everything. Camila slid her sunglasses up into her hair. Is this a bad time? No one responded to that either. Amy finally turned to her younger brother, jaw tight. We're discussing why Mom has been excluding her from family events for years. Camila blinked. Oh, that. Diane jerked her head toward her. Excuse me, what do you mean, oh that? Jeremy rubbed the back of his neck. He looked nervous, the kind of nervous that said he'd been holding something for a long time and wasn't ready for the explosion that would follow. Amy folded her arms. What do you know? Jeremy glanced at his mother, then at me, then at Brett. And then he sighed. I wasn't going to say anything, he said quietly. But since everything's already out in the open, my stomach dropped. There it was, the sentence that always meant something heavy was coming. Camila nodded aggressively, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Yeah, honestly, it's about time somebody said it. Diane stiffened. Said what exactly? That you've been doing this for years, Camila said unfiltered. Not just to her, to everybody. You pick favorites, and you freeze out anyone you don't like. It's obvious. If a grenade had gone off on the deck, the reaction couldn't have been more dramatic. Diane gasped, clutching her chest theatrically. How dare you? But Jeremy cut her off, and he never cut her off. Mom, he said, voice breaking. You did the same thing with my last girlfriend. Diane's eyes widened. That girl was rude. She wasn't rude, Jeremy said sharply. You just didn't like her because she asked about boundaries, and because she had opinions. Every time she tried to get close to this family, you made it impossible. You told me she made you uncomfortable, Diane said defensively. No, Mom, he said. I told you she felt unwelcome. Because she was. A hush settled over the deck. Jeremy's voice cracked. And you know what happened? She eventually told me she couldn't picture a future where her partner's mother hated her. So she left. And I pretended I was okay with it, but I wasn't. She meant a lot to me. Diane staggered slightly, as if the words had struck her physically. I felt something aching and familiar twist inside me. Losing a relationship because of Diane suddenly wasn't just my burden or my fear. Jeremy continued, quieter. I thought maybe it was just a one-time thing. But then you started doing it to her, too. And to be honest, I think you do it to anyone who doesn't worship you. Camila nodded. Facts. Jeremy shot her a look. Camila! What? She shrugged. You said it yourself last night. And everyone here deserves to hear the truth. The deck fell silent again. Everyone deserved to hear the truth. The sentence lingered like smoke. Brett swallowed hard. Wait, what truth? Jeremy exhaled shakily. He looked ashamed, angry, and exhausted all at once. Mom's been lying to all of us, he said. For years. About how she treats people. About why she excludes people. About what her intentions really are. Diane's face twisted. That's not. And, Jeremy said louder, cutting her off again, about Dad. The air snapped. Dad. Every head turned toward Jeremy at once, except Diane, who went rigid, eyes wide, dread flooding her expression. Amy whispered. Jeremy, what are you talking about? He looked like he wanted to run, but instead, he forced himself to continue. Mom didn't just exclude girlfriends or wives. She's been controlling Dad for years, and covering up the real reason he stopped coming to family events. Diane's voice cracked. Jeremy. No, Mom. His voice broke. No more lies. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. What did this have to do with her husband? With the family? Brett stepped forward slowly. Jeremy, what do you mean? Dad always says he's busy. That work. Work isn't the problem, Jeremy whispered. Mom is. Silence. Jeremy swallowed hard. Dad didn't skip the Vegas reunion because he was traveling. He stayed home because Mom told him she didn't want him around everyone. She said he ruined the dynamic. Amy's jaw dropped. And the lake house weekend? Jeremy continued. He wanted to come. Mom told him it was better if it was just the kids. She made him feel like any opinion he had was wrong or inconvenient. Diane's lips trembled violently. I was trying to. And the worst part, Jeremy said, voice shaking, is that he believed her. She made him feel like an outsider in his own family. My breath caught. Outsider. In his own family. The same way she had treated me. And last month, Jeremy said, he told me he's been considering leaving. Diane staggered backward as if someone had physically shoved her. No, she whispered. He wouldn't leave me. Jeremy's voice softened, but not with sympathy, with sadness. He said he can't live with someone who treats people like they're disposable. Then he looked right at me. He said he sees how she treats you. And that watching her push you out of the family was the moment he finally admitted she's been doing it to him for decades. Diane's legs gave out, and she sank into a deck chair, staring at nothing. Her world, the world where she controlled every dynamic, every narrative, was collapsing. But Jeremy wasn't finished. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. He asked me to give this to all of you, Jeremy said softly, in case Mom kept pretending everything was fine. Diane lunged forward weakly. Jeremy, don't. But Jeremy unfolded the paper anyway. It was a letter. From their father. And what he had written inside would change everything. Not just for Diane, but for Brett, and for the future of my marriage. Inside the letter lies the truth Diane never wanted her children to know, and the truth Brett can no longer ignore. And when he reads it, he realizes something about our marriage he may not be able to fix. The letter that breaks everything and exposes more than anyone was ready for. Jeremy unfolded the letter with trembling hands. The wind tugged gently at the corners, but he held it steady, as if releasing even a single fragment might weaken the truth inside. Diane sat frozen, eyes wide, knuckles white against the arms of the deck chair. Brett hovered beside her, unsure whether to comfort her or brace for impact. Amy looked ready to rip the letter from her brother's hands herself. And I stood in the center of it all, realizing that the story I thought I knew was only half the truth. Jeremy cleared his throat. Dad wrote this 2 months ago, he said quietly. He wanted us to know what's been happening, in his own words. He began to read. To my children, if you're reading this, It means I wasn't able to say any of this aloud. Your mother doesn't allow certain conversations. She stops them before they start, sometimes with tears, sometimes with guilt, sometimes by turning you against each other. But this time, I can't keep quiet. I love my family. All of you. But I haven't felt like a part of it for a long time. Somewhere along the way, I became an accessory instead of a partner. A presence she edited out whenever it suited her. At holidays, she said you kids were better off without my opinions. At gatherings, she insisted I was too tired or too busy. Eventually, I believed her. Amy covered her mouth, eyes burning. Jeremy continued, I want you to know something important. None of this was my choice. Your mother's need for control has pushed all of us away. Me. And now, your wives, girlfriends, future partners. She treats them the way she treats me, as if love must be earned by obedience. And when they don't bend, she punishes them with exclusion. The wind quieted. Even the waves seemed to soften, as if listening. Diane shook her head violently. That's not true, she choked out. I don't. But her voice broke under the weight of her husband's words. Jeremy continued reading. I watched her freeze your sister's friends out for years. I watched her push Jeremy's last girlfriend away. And now she's trying to do it again, to your brother's partner. And worst of all, to your wife. My heart slammed against my ribs. This was the first time Brett's father had ever acknowledged me in this context. And he'd said your wife. Not her. Not the daughter-in-law. He saw me clearly. Diane's breath came in short gasps. Stop, she whispered. Jeremy, stop reading. But Jeremy didn't stop. He couldn't. I've tried to talk to her. I've tried to ask her to treat your wife with kindness because she deserves it. Because she is family. Because exclusion damages relationships beyond repair. Your mother dismissed me every time. She's fine, she'd say. She has her own family. But what kind of family are we if we keep choosing who counts? A tear slid down Amy's cheek. Porter squeezed her shoulder. Brett's eyes filled as he stared at his mother with quiet disbelief. And Diane, she didn't cry. She just stared ahead, stunned, as if the world she'd built had finally cracked open. Jeremy read the final lines slowly. I am writing this because I want change. For myself. For all of you. For your future families. If nothing changes, I will have to step away. Not because I don't love you, but because I can't keep being the example of what you think marriage should look like. I hope this letter helps you understand the truth. And I hope it pushes your mother to see the harm she's caused. With love, Dad. Silence crushed the deck. For a long moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the distant rolling of waves and the faint clatter of ice in a forgotten glass. Jeremy folded the letter with shaking hands and tucked it back into his pocket. Amy wiped her eyes. Mom, is it true? Did you really do all this? To Dad? To us? Diane's throat bobbed. I was trying to keep our family together. Amy's voice cracked. By pushing people out, Diane looked at her daughter helplessly. You don't understand. Help us then, Amy said. Explain it. But Diane didn't speak. Because the truth was simple. She had no explanation. Brett stepped forward then, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Mom, he whispered, did you really not want Dad at the lake house? Or Vegas? Or even Christmas last year? Her voice trembled. I thought it would be easier without him. My chest tightened. Easier. The word that always hid cruelty. That's how you treat me, I said quietly. Like the whole family is easier without me. Diane looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since I'd married into her family. And she broke. I'm sorry, she whispered. But it wasn't the kind of sorry that fixes things. It was the kind someone says when they finally realize they've been the storm all along. Before anyone could respond, my mother appeared at my side. Her presence was steady, grounding, the calm in the chaos. She looked at Diane with a kindness that was almost painful. You know, my mother said softly, with the right work, families can heal. But only if everyone is willing to change. The words lingered in the air, weighty and true. But the moment shattered when Brett turned to me, eyes raw. I need to ask you something, he said quietly. And it may change everything. My pulse quickened. What is it? He swallowed hard. After everything my family has done, and everything I didn't do you still want to stay married to me? The deck spun just a little. Everyone froze, even Diane. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about us. My answer changes the direction of our marriage, and what Brett says next forces me to confront a truth I've avoided for years. The real question isn't whether I still love him, it's whether love is enough. Brett's question hung in the air like the last note of a song no one wanted to end. Do you still want to stay married to me? He wasn't angry, or defensive, or trying to guilt me. He just looked hollow, like he'd finally understood the weight of everything he'd let happen. The deck felt smaller, the air heavier. Even Diane stopped breathing. My heart thudded in my chest as I searched for an answer that didn't exist yet. I cared about him. I loved him. But love had never been the issue. The issue was loyalty, protection, partnership. The issue was how many times I'd been pushed aside to keep his mother comfortable. I don't know, I said finally. My voice was soft, but the words hit like a wave crashing against a dock. Brett closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not anger, not resentment, resolve. Then let me earn it, he said. Let me earn our marriage back. Diane made a small choking sound. Brett! He held up his hand, and for the first time in years, she went silent instantly. Mom, don't. Please. I need to talk to my wife. Jeremy looked at the two of us with something like relief. Amy nodded approvingly. Even my father, standing further back with his arms crossed, watched with wary hope. Brett took a breath. I've spent most of my life trying to avoid upsetting my mom. And in doing that, I've upset the person I promised to protect. I see that now. I should have stood up for you the moment she said you weren't invited. Hell, the first time you were excluded from anything. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't realize how deep the pattern was. Not until I saw how she treated Dad. And hearing his letter, his voice broke. I don't want to end up like him. Diane winced as if stabbed. Brett, I never. Mom, stop, he said again more firmly. I'm not doing this today. I'm talking to my wife. Diane fell back into silence, and for the first time, Brett didn't rush to comfort her. He stayed focused on me. I want counseling, boundaries, action, not just words. And I know you don't trust me right now, but I want to spend every day earning that trust back. His sincerity hit me harder than any apology could, but wanting change wasn't the same as proving it. I need time, I whispered. He nodded. Take all the time you need. My father stepped closer then, addressing Brett directly. Change isn't a speech, son. It's consistency. Brett swallowed. I understand. Diane suddenly stood up, trembling, her voice cracking with panic. You're choosing her over me? Brett stared at her for a long, quiet moment. I'm choosing my marriage. The one I vowed to protect. Amy exhaled shakily. Porter nodded in agreement. Jeremy looked at his mother with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. Diane's mask crumbled. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she whispered. I wanted things a certain way. At the cost of everyone else's happiness, Amy said gently. Mom, that isn't family. Diane's face tightened, then loosened. Like she finally understood she wasn't losing control. She'd lost it a long time ago. My mother stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Diane's arm. If you're willing to do the work, she said softly, you can rebuild. But only if you truly want to. Diane looked at her, really looked at her, and broke into silent tears. Not performative tears. Real ones. Tears of a woman who had just realized how many years she'd spent building walls and calling them boundaries. But it wasn't my job to fix her. It wasn't my responsibility to heal a family that hadn't protected me. I needed space. I needed clarity. I turned to Brett. I'm going back to my cabin to think. He nodded immediately. I'll give you all the space you need. As I walked away, my mother followed at a distance until I reached the hallway outside the lounge. She didn't ask questions. She simply placed a hand on my back. Whatever you choose, she said. We'll support you. I hugged her tightly, letting the certainty of her love ground me. When I reached my cabin, I shut the door and sat on the edge of my bed. The room swayed gently with the motion of the yacht, and for once, I couldn't tell whether the uneasy rocking was from the ocean or everything inside me. I loved Brett, but love had spent too many years fighting battles it shouldn't have fought. I needed to know if he would truly stand up for me now. Not in a single moment. Not because his family finally confronted him, but because he understood, deeply, what I needed from him moving forward. I didn't know how long I sat there, minutes, maybe an hour, before a soft knock came at the door. It wasn't Brett. It was Amy. I'm not here to convince you of anything, she said when I opened the door. I just wanted to thank you. For what? I asked. For forcing this family to face the truth. For standing up for yourself. For showing me what boundaries look like. She hesitated. And for giving my brother the chance to grow up. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She gave me a small hug and walked away. Later, as the sun began to set, I stepped out onto my private balcony. The sky was painted gold and pink, the water glimmering like a sheet of molten glass. Behind us, the cruise ship was anchored several miles away, a tiny speck compared to our yacht. My phone buzzed. It was Brett. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here. No pressure. Just love. And for the first time all day, my chest didn't feel tight. I didn't know yet what I would choose. But I knew this, the old marriage was gone. If there was going to be a new one, it would have to be built from scratch, with honesty, boundaries, and equal footing. Because for the first time ever, he wasn't choosing fear. He was choosing me. But choosing me once didn't guarantee choosing me always. And the test that waited for Brett back home. It would prove whether he was truly ready to stand by my side, or if this yacht confrontation was just a temporary awakening. The rest of the yacht trip moved quietly, almost peacefully, like everyone had finally stopped pretending and could breathe for the first time. I spent most of the last day with my family, swimming, lounging, letting myself exist without the weight of someone else's insecurities pressing against my ribs. But the real test wasn't going to happen on the water. It was going to happen the moment we returned home. Because words on a yacht surrounded by luxury and witnesses weren't the same as actions in the real world. And I needed to see which version of Brett came home with me, the man who shrank to keep his mother comfortable, or the one who finally stood tall beside me. When we docked, Brett waited on the pier, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. Diane wasn't with him. Good. I walked down the gangway slowly, my family watching from behind like a quiet wall of support. Brett's eyes met mine, uncertain but hopeful, and he didn't try to hug me right away. He just said, "I'm here. Whatever pace you want." That alone was new. We drove separately, me with my parents, him alone. I needed that distance, that last bit of silence to prepare for the work ahead. When I stepped into the house we shared, I realized I had no idea how it would feel. But it didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like a blank space waiting to see what we would build on top of it. Brett didn't smother me with apologies or speeches. He made dinner quietly. He cleaned up afterward. And for the first time in 4 years, he didn't answer his mother's call the second her name flashed across his phone. He silenced it, then turned the phone face down. And that tiny movement struck me harder than anything else. "She'll probably call again," I said softly. "Then I'll answer tomorrow," he replied. "Right now, I'm with you." It wasn't grand. It was simple. And simple was what we had been missing. That night we talked. Not with tension, not with fear, but with truth. He told me he'd booked his first therapy session for the next morning. Told me he'd already emailed 2 marriage counselors. Told me he didn't want to be his father, trapped in a life shaped by someone else's demands. I told him I wasn't promising anything. I told him forgiveness wasn't a straight line. I told him trust wasn't rebuilt with declarations. It was rebuilt with evidence. He nodded each time, not flinching, not pleading, not shrinking. "I'll show you," he said. "Not tell you. Show you." And for the first time in months, I let myself breathe. The next few weeks were slow and delicate. Brett went to therapy twice a week. He came home quieter but clearer, like someone learning how to walk again. He told me one night the therapist helped him understand his entire childhood had trained him to appease rather than assert, to avoid conflict instead of confront it. "It was easier to disappoint myself than disappoint her," he said. And I didn't realize how much that bled into our marriage. I listened. I didn't fix it for him. That wasn't my job. Meanwhile, Diane tried calling, then texting, then calling again. Finally, she sent an apology message. Not long, not dramatic, almost hesitant. "I'm trying to understand. I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. I want to do better." I didn't respond right away. Growth isn't linear, and apologies aren't keys to immediate access. Brett didn't push me to answer either. That was another new thing. A week later, I agreed to meet her for coffee, not for her sake, but for mine. Closure matters. I walked in expecting excuses or tears or self-pity. Instead, I found a woman who looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. She didn't talk in circles. She didn't defend herself. She just said, "I spent my whole life controlling things because I was afraid people would leave me. And in doing that, I pushed people away anyway, including my own husband. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't complete, but it was honest. And sometimes honesty is the first real stone in rebuilding." Over the next few months, Brett kept choosing me, not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. When Diane slipped into old habits, he corrected her calmly. When she cried, he didn't bend. He set boundaries. When she tried to guilt him, he didn't cave. He didn't fight her. He didn't escalate anything. He simply refused to abandon himself, or me, to keep her comfortable. And that was the difference. For our 5th anniversary, Brett planned a simple weekend trip. Nothing extravagant. Nothing meant to overshadow what happened. Just quality time, real conversation, and a small necklace with both our birthstones intertwined. A quiet symbol that we weren't two people orbiting someone else's gravity anymore. We were finally building our own. 6 months after the yacht confrontation, my father-in-law reached out. He wanted dinner. All of us. Even Diane. I hesitated, but Brett squeezed my hand gently and said, "We can walk in together. And we can walk out together." And for the first time, I believed him. Dinner wasn't perfect. Diane was nervous but respectful. Brett's father was kind but quiet. Amy teased her mother gently whenever she slipped. Jeremy held Camila's hand like he was daring anyone to object. My family hosted, because Diane asked them to. When the night ended, Brett pulled me aside outside the restaurant and asked, "Are we okay?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something important. We weren't the same couple who walked onto that yacht. We were new, rebuilt, equal. "Yeah," I said softly, "we're okay." And then, because the truth matters, I added, "And we earned it." Brett smiled, relieved, grateful, changed. I squeezed his hand, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something I had to endure. It felt like something we could build. Together.